The Buddha's teachings on wealth. Going to the temple to pray is useless. Welcome back everyone to Mind Podcast. The Buddha taught that if you try to get rich but remain poor, it's because there is a fundamental misunderstanding. While business people are expected to make money, Buddhists are taught not to be attached to it. How do we reconcile this contradiction? I invite you to take the time to watch this entire video because many people may not fully grasp this issue when learning about Buddhism. The content of this video is based on independent research, so if there's anything incorrect, I hope for your understanding and feedback in the comments section below. If you find something reasonable, take time to reflect and discover the truth for yourself. It's a mistake to think that the Buddha discouraged his disciples from becoming wealthy. On the contrary, he encouraged and even guided his students in building wealth. As business people, we must earn money, while as Buddhists, we should not be overly attached. How can we resolve this conflict? I know some of you may think this way because many people have misunderstood the Buddha and Buddhism itself. Many believe Buddhism is a form of worship and that the Buddha is like a god or saint, similar to how other religions view their deities. As a result, you may become superstitious, going to the temple to pray for all sorts of things. However, Buddhism is a path of wisdom, and the Buddha is an enlightened teacher of both gods and humans. He is not a deity who bestows blessings or curses. Remember that the historical Buddha was a real person. He had a wife, children, wealth, and lived like we do, enjoying all the pleasures of life. Later, he renounced it all to seek the path of liberation from suffering, which he ultimately found. It is a mistake to believe that Buddhists must live in poverty. It's also a mistake to think that being a Buddhist means living a life of hardship, endurance, and self-punishment. The Buddha taught us to live a balanced life, avoiding both excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures and extreme asceticism, which destroys this precious body. You misunderstand because you haven't had the opportunity or the right conditions to read the original Buddhist scriptures, namely the Nikaya, which contains the Buddha's original teaching. Many decades ago, I was like you, only reading the Amitabha Sutra, a text meant for those who wish to be reborn in the Western Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha. Then there's the Kshitigarbha Sutra, which is for rescuing those suffering in hell, the Universal Gate Sutra, for praying to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva to relieve suffering and disaster, and the Medicine Buddha Sutra for calling upon the Medicine Buddha to heal illness. These are all found in the daily chanting books used in temples across northern Vietnam, recited day and night by monks and Buddhists. Most of these sutras are in classical Chinese or Sino-Vietnamese, though how much is actually understood? I sympathize with my former self and with you today. So how should we approach the sutras now? The Buddha taught many sutras, each tailored to different audiences. The teachings for the sick are different from those for business people. Teachings for tea teachers differ from those for farmers. The teachings for a butcher are different from those for students. Just as a doctor prescribes different medications for heart disease versus stomach issues, or for skin conditions versus kidney infections, it is not appropriate to apply a sutra meant for a mother raising a child or prenatal education to a king or a CEO. That would be like giving liver cancer medication to someone with a gynecological condition. There are many sutras where the Buddha teaches about wealth, how to earn, spend, and manage money, how to divide assets, how to lead, how to have vision and manage. As business people, we should seek out and read these particular sutras. We don't necessarily need to read the more popular sutras found in daily chanting books that are common in northern temples, as I mentioned earlier. These types of sutras are only meant for the elderly, those who are sick, and those approaching the end of their lives. You continuously read and chant these without proper understanding, you may end up feeling discouraged, negative, and self-suggesting harmful thoughts. Reading and chanting without understanding is the way of those without wisdom, and Buddhism is a path meant for the wise. The Buddha's explanation for those who struggle to become wealthy. Long ago, the Buddha advised lay practitioners to avoid occupations that diminish their merit, as these might bring quick wealth, but would only provide temporary enjoyment while ruining one's entire life, leading to ongoing suffering. Everyone desires wealth, But it's far better to be wealthy without causing harm than to accumulate riches while piling up more sins. This kind of wealth is not desirable. Poverty or wealth is a result of karma, not something bestowed by a god or deity. If a deity could grant wealth, it would be unfair, favoring the rich and despising the poor, making the poor suffer. Therefore, wealth and poverty are created by us through different karmic causes. In the Anguttara Nikaya of the Pali Canon, the Buddha once taught while residing in Kosambi in the Goshita Park. Venerable Sariputta approached, paid respects, and asked, "Why is it, Blessed One, that some people fail in business, unable to achieve their desired success, while others succeed beyond their expectations?" The Buddha responded, "Sariputta, there is a person who, when visiting a recluse or monk, promises help but fails to give what was promised. After passing away, this person is reborn in a place where, despite their business efforts, they meet with failure and do not achieve their desired success. On the other hand, there is a person who visits a recluse, promises help, and fulfills that promise. After passing away, they are reborn in a place where whatever business they engage in, they achieve success as desired. Moreover, Sariputta, there is a person who, when visiting a recluse, promises help and gives even more than promised. After passing away, they are reborn in a place where whatever business they engage in, they achieve success beyond their expectations." This sutra shows us that gaining wealth is not only about making money, but also about accumulating merit through offerings, generosity, and performing good deeds. This ensures that one has the merit to enjoy wealth continuously. There are people who are extremely wealthy, but because they do not practice generosity despite being vegetarian, their assets gradually disappear without reason, leading to the collapse of both wealth and family happiness. In the business world, often referred to as a battlefield, those who are unfortunate may naively blame their failure on bad timing or envy from others. Successful people aren't necessarily wealthier, more talented, or more powerful than anyone else. The key lies in the foundation of merit they have cultivated in the past and present. To summarize the story clearly, the Buddha explained that some people approach a monk, promise to help, but do not fulfill that promise. After they die and are reborn, whatever business they engage in ends in failure, and they never achieve their desires. However, if someone promises help to a monk and fulfills that promise, after they pass away, they are reborn, and whatever business they undertake is successful. Furthermore, if a person promises to help a monk and gives more than they promised, after they die and are reborn, they achieve success beyond their expectations, greater than they ever hoped for or planned. Do you see this? The Buddha teaches us that if we want to be wealthy, we must keep our promises. If we, as business people, promise 10 but deliver 11 or 12, we will become very wealthy, wealthier than we ever imagined. Who says the Buddha doesn't teach about wealth? I've studied the Buddha's teachings carefully and applied them effectively for decades. The Buddha teaches us to accumulate merit through generosity, offering gifts, donations, and helping others. This is the secret to sustainable wealth. Truly wealthy people, those who maintain their wealth over time, are not just talented, they are also compassionate, virtuous, and possess great merit. As business people, we should reflect on the Buddha's teachings about proper offering. Offering in the right way, at the right time, and to the right person is more important than the act of offering itself. Offering to 1,000 ordinary people does not compare to offering to one virtuous person or enlightened teacher. Giving food to 100 people doesn't compare to giving a bowl of rice to someone on the verge of starvation or providing urgent medicine to a critically ill patient. I've seen and experienced this many times, and I'll make a separate video about it. To succeed in business long term, we must avoid certain practices. The Buddha also taught about the types of businesses that entrepreneurs should stay away from. And these teachings are clearly recorded in the Anguttara Nikaya. There are 5 types of business the Buddha advised against, which are referred to as unlawful trades: selling weapons, selling people, human trafficking, selling meat, selling alcohol, and selling poison. If we want to be sustainably wealthy and happy forever, we must avoid engaging in these 5 types of business. A wise person has right views. With right views, they know right from wrong, and knowing right from wrong, They wouldn't foolishly engage in forbidden acts. Just like if we know a liquid is poisonous, a wise person would never drink it. If we know something is wrong, harmful, and forbidden, but still intentionally do it, that is a person without wisdom, a person in ignorance. We should not blame them personally. The fault lies in the ignorance that fills their body and mind. Those who intentionally engage in harmful businesses are driven by blind greed and insatiable desire, ignorant. I have carefully studied and applied these teachings of the Buddha for decades. 5 reasons to build wealth. Let's read another sutra together. To summarize, once the Buddha was staying in Shravashti, in the garden of Anathapindika, the wealthy and generous businessman known to all. Anathapindika approached the Buddha, paid his respects, and sat to one side. The Buddha then spoke to him, saying there are 5 reasons to build wealth. 1. First reason is that wealth, earned through effort, diligence, and the strength of one's hands, acquired legally and through hard work, brings happiness and satisfaction. It allows one to bring happiness to their parents, spouse, children, and servants. 2. The second reason is that a disciple of the Buddha who earns wealth through effort can bring joy and happiness to their friends and loved ones. 3. The third reason is that by earning wealth through diligence, one protects themselves from misfortunes that could lead to poverty, ensuring their assets are kept safe. 4. The fourth reason is that a disciple who earns wealth can make offerings to relatives, guests, the departed, kings, and celestial beings. 5. The fifth reason is that a disciple of the Buddha who earns wealth through effort can make offerings to monks and Brahmins, and this supreme offering brings boundless merit in both the human and celestial realm. As you can see, who says the Buddha didn't teach the principles of wealth building? These are reasons the Buddha provided to help both his disciples and business people understand the importance of wealth. I have studied and applied these teachings for decades. Earning wealth as taught by the Buddha doesn't just benefit oneself, it benefits countless others. The person who earns wealth enjoys the fruits, as does society, both materially and spiritually. I always think simply, we can only give others what we have. We cannot give what we don't have. To help the poor, we must have money. To teach and share, we must have knowledge and experience. To bring joy and happiness to others, we must first be happy ourselves. Earning money to help the poor is a noble goal. Yes, becoming wealthy according to the Buddha's teachings brings joy to many people. If we have money and help the poor and needy, countless people, from our own families to relatives, neighbors, and even society as a whole, can find happiness. The wealth of Anathapindika, Sudatta, and the lesson of prosperity. As business people, we create tremendous merit. In my understanding and experience, the Buddha always encouraged and praised genuine wealth building. This reminds me of Anathapindika, also known as Sudatta, one of the wealthiest business people of all time. He is honored in almost every temple in northern Vietnam, with statues of him and Ananda placed on either side of the Buddha. Near the protective deities, you'll often find a statue of Anathapindika, known by the common name Dik Chua Ong, Lord of Wealth. On the opposite side, there is Ananda, one of the Buddha's 10 greatest disciples, who possessed exceptional memory. Ananda, as the Buddha's attendant, accompanied him for decades and memorized nearly all of his teachings, which were later passed down and eventually written into sutras. Without Ananda, we wouldn't have the Buddha's teachings today. Anathapindika was immensely wealthy and once covered an entire piece of land with gold coins to purchase the Jetavana Grove, Jeta's Grove, build a monastery for the Buddha and his disciples. This location became the site where many of the Buddha's most important sutras were delivered. We should remember Anathapindika not only for his wealth, but for his great deeds as well. Every year, during the 3-month rainy retreat, the Buddha and his disciples did not go out to beg for food, stayed in the monastery to study and practice. Anathapindika provided all the food, drink, and necessities for the Buddha's Sangha, which numbered up to 1,250 disciples. He had not been so wealthy, who would have supported the Buddha and his large Sangha during the rainy season? This is why it is impossible to discourage wealth building. The Buddha only advised against accumulating wealth through unethical means. In fact, if you read the sutras, you'll often see them begin with the words, "Thus have I heard," followed by accounts of the Buddha residing in the city of Shravashti, in the garden of Anathapindika, under the trees of Prince Jeta. Many of the Buddha's teachings took place in this monastery over days, months, and years. Without the financial support of Anathapindika, who donated food and resources, what would have happened? Would we have the sutras to read and study today? In my view, the Buddha did not discourage wealth building. He only warned against greed. Blind, selfish greed, like trying to fill a bottomless bag. Greed without sharing and helping others. The Buddha advises us to earn money and use it to help others through generosity and offerings. I often read the sutras where the Buddha teaches lay people like you and me who live ordinary lives, have families, and work. We read to understand and to practice. Keep in mind that the Buddha taught many different groups. During the day, he might teach lay disciples. In the evening, he might teach monks and nuns, and at night, he would teach the heavenly beings. The misunderstanding some people, including you and I, may have is that instead of reading the teachings meant for householders, we study those meant for monks or heavenly beings. But monks and heavenly beings are completely different from us. Monks have renounced family life, live in the monastic community, shave their heads, and wear robes. They live and operate in a very different way from us. If we look at everything and think it's easy, then grab a hoe and start digging, it's not quite right. Don't blame the faucet for bedwetting. To be honest, this video isn't meant for the general public, but for entrepreneurs and those seeking to make money and wealth, for themselves, for society, and to help others. Entrepreneurs are wise people. There are two types of entrepreneurs, those who rise through their craft and those who rise through formal education and training. The first group might open a restaurant because they know how to cook, or start a construction company because they know how to build houses. However, if this type of entrepreneur isn't equipped with leadership and management skills, they may eventually close down. Many entrepreneurs in this group, if they aren't careful, easily fall into superstitious practices, going to the temple, offering fruit, and asking Buddha for success. If they succeed, they rejoice. If they fail, they blame external factors. Entrepreneurs of this type need to change their superstitious habits immediately. Don't go to the temple to bargain with the Buddha, thinking that a bouquet of flowers or a plate of fruit will bring wealth in return. Success comes from serving and leading with your mind, heart, and courage, as the titles of two great books suggest. You must rely on yourself and not shift the blame. They need to learn basic skills, which have been distilled in books on leadership, management, communication, and social relations. We need to choose the right path for ourselves, with the knowledge to confidently move forward toward wealth. If you wet the bed, it's because of weak kidneys, or maybe because you drank too much water before sleeping, or because of health issues or bad habits. It's not the faucet's fault. Don't blame the faucet. How unjust would that be? Learning from the Buddha, I am an entrepreneur, and I always think about and learn from my teacher, the Buddha. I look to him to learn about his virtues, especially his passion and perseverance. He had the courage to leave behind his wife, children, palace, riches, and pleasures to enter the forest alone to seek enlightenment. His burning passion to find the truth and the path to liberation drove him, and he succeeded. Whenever I face challenges, I look to him, reread his teachings in the Nikaya, especially the 21 volumes, to regain my motivation and find my way. I also have two bedside books that I always recommend to everyone, not just entrepreneurs. EQ, the Passion Quotient, and IQ, the Adversity Quotient. These books are incredibly effective and helpful. I want to mention other examples of successful individuals who have studied, learned, and applied the Buddha's teachings with great success in managing their businesses and lives. They know how to accumulate wealth and give unconditionally. One such example is Mark Zuckerberg. He created Facebook, providing a platform for society from which we all benefit. He has given away much of his wealth, donating large sums to charity. Isn't he an exemplary student of the Buddha, even if he never claims to be a Buddhist? When I think of the best and most correct teachings, I naturally remember my teacher and the many other meditation practitioners. One such teacher is meditation master Autamasara. He's a spiritual leader and an inspiration to over 3,000 meditators at the Thabarwa Meditation Center in Myanmar. Not only does he guide meditation, but he also builds roads, houses, water systems, schools, and clinics, and creates jobs for the poor. Each village he supports helps around 15,000 people in Myanmar. Yet, meditation master Autamasara takes no concern for himself. He lives on one vegetarian meal a day. That's the spirit of service. He is a monk and a meditation master who does not seek wealth, but in many ways he is wealthier than many of us. Through my research and experience, I am convinced that one of the best and most correct teachers of wealth is the Buddha. His methods are simple, yet profound. Please listen carefully to this video and seek out the examples of successful entrepreneurs who apply the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha teaches us how to earn wealth righteously, not just for one lifetime, but for countless lifetimes. The question is, do you know this? And once you know, do you have the determination to apply it? I believe you will find the answer, as I see you as a wise person.